even the Washington Post fact checker hit Joe Biden this morning, saying that he offered a lot on emotion but very little on details. And, you know, when I talk about the Biden presidency, I really refer to it as the participation trophy presidency, meaning that Joe Biden thinks it's just enough to show up and he's going to get some kind of award. He sets the bar so low that it makes it almost impossible to not meet expectations. One thing he didn't mention last night in his speech is that President Trump's Operation Warp Speed already had us distributing 1 million doses of the vaccine a day. So Joe Biden's goal to have 100 million doses in 100 days, President Trump already had us on track to go and do that.
You say, yeah, you're alleging here that he sort of laid the foundation for it, and based on the rate at which people were receiving vaccinations, it would add up with that 100-day goal here. Also in the speech, something that was not mentioned, it was a brief speech and address to Americans here, but no mention of China, of course, where U.S. intelligence officials believe the virus originated here. Does that sort of give us a preview as to what we could expect for accountability from the Biden administration when it comes to China and its response to the coronavirus?
Well, great question. In fact, we're seeing next week when Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, meets up with Wang Yi in Anchorage, the fact that Joe Biden is having his team meet in Anchorage and not in Washington shows that he's already trying to be deferential to the Chinese. He's already capitulating to the Chinese. I spoke with President Trump about this last night, and he said he would never go and do that. He would make the Chinese come over to Washington to have the meeting. But even worse than that, last night Joe Biden criticized President Trump in a little kind of a backhanded way, implying that he had done nothing against COVID when President Trump shut down the travel with China and with Europe, got the Defense Production Act to get going on PPE as the cupboard was essentially bare. And as I mentioned before, Operation Warp Speed. In fact, on Joe Biden's inauguration day, they distributed 1.5 million doses of the vaccine. And so for Joe Biden to take it that step further and imply nothing was done, I think is pretty shameful. And he's not going to do anything against China. I think we all see the handwriting on the wall there.
You know, we've often been able to look on the former president's Twitter feed to sort of get an idea, an immediate response to breaking news of the day. I'm sure he would have shared some tweets following the speech last night from President Biden. But of course, he doesn't have that ability to do so, knowing that his account has been restricted. Have you heard from Donald Trump in response to what's coming out of the Biden administration so far?
Yes, in fact, I was with President Trump last night. You know, to your point there, this is something where President Trump is always thinking through these things. And I asked him if he wanted to put out a statement or weigh in or comment on what Joe Biden was doing with his national address last night. He said, no, if I go and jump in, then they're going to go and match it up for here's what Joe Biden is saying versus here's what I'm saying. Let's let Joe Biden just go out there on his own and watch him faceplant. Actually, the faceplant was my word. President Trump didn't say that, but effectively allow him to faceplant. And that's what we're seeing. Even the mainstream media outlets this morning were pointing out the fact that Joe Biden didn't mention the great work that the Trump administration had done. And I think folks are starting to realize, hey, Joe Biden is asleep at the switch. He thinks he can barely show up and, again, get the award just for participating. And the other thing we didn't hear last night, anything about the crisis at the southern border, which, by the way, Joe Biden created.
And that does continue to be, in fact, a crisis. There are reporters from a variety of media outlets who are pointing that out based on numbers of unaccompanied minors at the border, as well as overall migrant numbers. Let's talk about, again, the president's future plans here, sort of the impact he could have on politics in America. He is in a sort acting behind the scenes right now, releasing potential support for Senate candidates in Georgia. My mind goes to Herschel Walker. He released a statement here. But also let's focus on potentially 2024, thoughts of his own running as well. You've said that former President Trump has not ruled out keeping Mike Pence as a potential running mate in 2024. Does that have the support of the base to keep Mike Pence on the Trump ticket?
Well, great question. And one of the things to also keep in mind is that President Trump, yes, while he has said that he will consider potentially a race in 2024, he hasn't made a decision yet. And so since he hasn't made a decision, he hasn't made any sort of decision about what might happen with even, say, a running mate. There's been no talk internally of swapping out or going a different direction at the VP spot. And again, we haven't even had a formal discussion about 2024 because President Trump said, you know what, there's a lot of time for that right now. We have the midterm midterms coming up. We got to win back the House. We got to win back the Senate. We got to go win some of these governor's races, especially in blue states where they changed up the election laws. It would be a much different outcome if we had Republicans in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the Great Lakes states. But, last night, NRSC chairman, the Republican Senatorial Committee chairman, Rick Scott, the senator from the great state of Florida, had dinner with President Trump where they talked about where they can match up on a number of the candidate recruitment efforts, how we can win back the Senate. It was a very good dinner, shows that the president and the NRSC and Senator Scott can work together to go and win this back for Republicans. But the one thing President Trump wants to make sure, no money for rhinos, and also we need to recruit America First conservatives.
Has Mike Pence met with the president?
They've spoken a couple times since President Trump and Vice President Pence left office. I do not believe that they have actually met in person yet. I know the vice president is traveling around and doing a number of things with his own